Hi everyone. In all my years of paranormal research, although I have experienced a multitude of unexplainable ghostly events, this recent account from a lovely young lady in the UK is one of the most delightful hauntings I have come across, and I'm so excited to share it with you all. It concerns a pair of haunted shoes. Pink shoes. Shoes that take themselves for a walk. Oh my god. Let's dive in.
I bought my pink shoes just before the pandemic happened, and prior to the first lockdown restrictions that came into force here in the UK, so early 2020. I bought them in a sports store, JD Sports, and I was actually going to buy them in white, but the store didn't have any in stock that were my size in white. The last pair they had in store in my size were the pink ones. I didn't know they even did them in pink and absolutely loved them straight away when I saw them in this colour. I'm a size 8, but I like to go half a size up, so it was a big bonus. The pink shoes were a perfect size match of size 8.5 and they fit perfectly. During the pandemic, lockdown restrictions in the UK were really stringent and it was a very uncertain time. To try and stay in positive mental health, I began walking and wore my new pink shoes on my walks, and I'd walk for miles pretty much every day. I discovered a new passion and hobby, which was walking, and I discovered lots of beautiful places on my walks with my pink shoes that I never knew existed. I really bonded with those pink shoes, and they were my everyday partners for walking, commuting to work, and then hanging out in when the lockdown restrictions were lifted, and I never wore any other shoes other than my pink ones. In 2021, I made a decision to take a 6-month career break and go travelling in the Philippines. I took my pink shoes with me, and they were my primary footwear of choice during my travelling around the Philippines. The first ever incident with my pink shoes took place in the Philippines, although at the time I didn't really think too much of it. But now that I look back, it's more evident. The accommodation I was lodging at had an open beach next to it, and I would wake up at sunrise and go for walks along this beautiful beach wearing my pink shoes pretty much every morning. One morning, I wore instead some sandals I had brought with me and took a walk on the beach. When I got back to the accommodation, I kicked my sandals off by a communal porchway at the accommodation. We'd leave all of our shoes on the porch, and this was completely normal. I'd also leave my pink shoes in this porch, along with other people's shoes who were in the accommodation. Later that morning, another traveller who I made friends with, who was in the same accommodation as me, knocked on my door, and he had my pink shoes in his hands. He asked me if I had left them on the beach, as he found them sitting there with no one around. I laughed it off and told him someone must have borrowed them, took them off, and accidentally left them there, as there were a few other girls in the accommodation. I really didn't think too much of it, and he put them back downstairs on the porch for me. The second incident with my pink shoes happened back in August this year, 2024. I had recently purchased some new running shoes and began walking in my newer shoes. I actually put my old pink shoes up for sale on Vinted, which is a selling site, as I was having a big clear out of my clothes. I cleaned the pink shoes up, and surprisingly they're still in good condition, and probably the strongest shoes I've owned. You'd never think they were 4 years old or have taken hundreds of thousands of steps. I know it may sound gross selling used shoes, but in the UK the cost of living is really high, and there are a lot of underprivileged people who can't afford new clothes and will buy second-hand clothing on sites like Vinted. I put the pink shoes up for £5. The shoes hadn't sold on the selling site when this happened, and I'd actually been for a walk in them the day before this event took place. I had left my pink shoes outside on my doorstep, and the following day, I went for a walk in my newer running shoes. When I left the house, my pink shoes were still sitting on the doorstep as I had seen them when locking my door and heading off on a walk. About 15 minutes into the walk on a very familiar local trail I'd walked hundreds of times, especially in my old pink shoes, I saw a pair of shoes randomly sat in the middle of the path I was walking towards. At first, I didn't realise they were my old pink shoes. I thought someone had simply left their shoes behind. It was only until I got closer I realised they were my pink shoes. They had the same wear marks, indentations, and were absolutely mine. I was astounded at how they got there and couldn't make sense of it, which is why I snapped a picture, as if I simply told anyone about it they wouldn't believe me. I picked the shoes up and took them home. I became so anxious that maybe someone was stalking me. I removed the selling advert of the shoes and I bought a mini Wi-Fi CCTV camera for the house that day. I live on my own, and none of my family members live near me. My mum was out of town that particular day, and my sister lives 40 miles away, so I knew it wasn't them playing a joke on me. I put the pink shoes in my shoe cupboard under the stairs. Later that week, I came back from work quite late in the evening and went to put my work shoes in the cupboard underneath the stairs. When I opened the cupboard door, my pink shoes had managed to fall off the second shelf on the shoe rack and had landed neatly together, resting on my newer running shoes. I couldn't believe it, so I looked back through hours of CCTV to make sure nobody had been in my house and nobody had been. But I heard the shoes fall off on the camera's sound. The noise they make when they fall off the shelf is extremely bizarre. It's not a big clump sound, but more as if the shoes fell down one by one and shuffled into place after they fell. After this, I was really frightened as I'd never experienced anything like it before. I called my friend to come over that night and explained to her what happened and showed her the camera footage. You can see the CCTV footage for yourself in a few minutes. She was as confused as I was, especially after I told her about a few days before when I found the pink shoes sitting in the middle of the path. She stayed with me that night, and we both agreed to place my phone camera facing the shoes for a while to see if anything happened with the shoes. We left my phone camera recording for 5 minutes, and when my friend was playing it back, she shouted that she saw shoes moving. At first I didn't see it, but after watching the video 2 or 3 times, you can clearly see both shoes shaking or wiggling their toe boxes. If you zoom in, you can evidently see them moving. There was nothing in the cupboard at the time that could cause any vibrations. The black box isn't a speaker, it's my Wi-Fi internet modem. The following morning, I got in touch with my sister who came over and she watched the video with me, and I told her everything that had been happening with my shoes. My sister is a lot more spiritual than I am. I'm rather logical and rational as I've never had any experiences before. However, my sister was fully engaged with my old pink shoes. I could tell that she believed in the shoes' escapades, and she even told me that they may have a consciousness of their own, from all of the energy that has been imbued into them from many years of happy memories they brought me. She also pointed out that when the shoes were shaking, it's something I do a lot with my feet. I have a tendency to subconsciously shake my feet when I'm anxious about something, and in the video it's like the shoes are mimicking my own movements despite me not wearing them. She also pointed out that in the picture of when I found the shoes on the path, the shoes were pointing in slightly. Again, I walk inwards slightly, and the shoes sitting like that is absolutely crazy. It's as if the shoes were walking how I do whilst wearing them. My sister took them with her that day, and she has since really taken to the shoes. She wears them every day now, and even addresses them like they are a pet of some kind, talking to them and calling them. Since she's had them, she's had a vast number of experiences with the shoes. She walks her dog in them, and on a number of occasions, before taking her dog for a walk, she'll find the shoes have moved from where she last put them, and are next to her dog, as if the shoes know it's time for her to put them on. Her dog isn't fazed in the slightest by the shoes, and will often sleep next to them. Another thing that happened with the shoes, my sister will always leave the shoes laced, as did I when I had them, and she's come across the shoes before completely untied, both shoes, again having moved from their last location where they were left. She apparently found them unlaced before going out, and just resting next to her bed. The last thing that happened was a few days ago. There was a terrible storm here in the UK. My sister was putting on the shoes, and when she looked down, both shoes had become unlaced extremely loosely. She knelt down and tried tightening the laces, but there was a lot of resistance with tightening them back up, as if the laces had a small knot in the eyelets of the shoes. She said she couldn't tighten them no matter how hard she pulled the laces, so she decided not to go on a walk, and literally said to the shoes that they were stubborn. I personally think the shoes were trying to prevent her from going on a walk, as the weather was really bad, and there were a few deaths that day, although not locally, but from trees falling down due to severe winds. My sister absolutely loves the shoes, and I'm really happy that the shoes have someone who really believes in them and totally accepts them, and I'm so happy that more memories can be made in them. My sister has also claimed that she's seen the shoes move, and she's convinced that they have the capability of walking on their own accord, as if they are pretending somebody is wearing them, but completely unoccupied. She is completely fine with this and even encourages the shoes to move at their free will. I, however, am absolutely still nervous of them. As I said, I'm not a big believer in the paranormal, but I really still don't know how those shoes do these crazy things, and it all sounds really silly and far-fetched, but I'm not making any of this up. Maybe there is something else to all this, as I've heard about possessions such as cars, dolls, and even houses that can develop their own consciousness, but I'm still trying to come to terms with it all. Now watch the footage of the shoes moving and then the CCTV footage. Pretty wild. Look closely.